Anxious attachment is one of the most misunderstood patterns in relationships. People will often describe it as clingy, needy, emotional, a bit too much, or just this general idea of constantly overthinking in relationships. But the truth is actually a lot deeper than that. Anxious attachment isn't a personality flaw, it's definitely not a weakness, and it's absolutely not something you chose for yourself. It's actually a nervous system pattern or a survival strategy, and it was actually shaped long before you even entered the dating world. If you ever felt like your emotions in relationships were too quick, too intensive, too much sometimes, this video is going to finally help it make sense. And not just help it make sense, but actually help you to understand how we can shift that as well. Because yes, you absolutely can become secure. Secure attachment isn't something that you're born with, it's something that you build over time. So today we're going really deep into the psychology behind anxious attachment, why it takes over so quickly in dating, what's happening in your brain, why certain people trigger it more than others, and more importantly, the 5 most effective ways to become secure from the inside out. This isn't going to be just some fluffy, airy fairy talk. This is grounded in real psychology, attachment theory, interpersonal neurobiology, and the lived experiences of hundreds of women who have sat exactly where you're sitting right now, who all sat there wondering why something as simple as dating can be so emotionally complex. So let's start with exactly what anxious attachment is at its core. Anxious attachment forms when the people that you depended on in childhood were generally quite inconsistent with their attention, their affection, and their emotional availability. Sometimes they would show up really warm, attuned, and present, and then sometimes they'd often be distracted, emotional, unpredictable, and just generally inconsistent. So your brain has took in all of these patterns and formed a core belief within yourself. Yes, from as early as childhood. This belief that love has to be earned, that it isn't stable, connection isn't guaranteed, I have to prove myself to be able to receive any form of affection and love from these people. And here's exactly why that's so important. Your attachment style generally becomes your operating system in romantic connections. Not because you consciously choose it, but because your nervous system does. This is why, as an adult, even the thought of emotional distance can be triggering to you. Not because you're being dramatic or overwhelming in any way, because your body learned early on that distance equals danger. I'm no longer safe. And then once you hit that danger state, you activate. Your system then moves into this hypervigilance, and your mind is all of a sudden searching for signs of rejection. Your emotions intensify, your body becomes really restless. Your thoughts all of a sudden start speeding up, and all of this can literally happen in a matter of seconds. Anxious attachment is so fast, it's powerful, and it's automatic. Not because you're actually physically unsafe in any way, but because your nervous system learned to anticipate the moment that love could be lost. If you've ever felt that you're too much, too emotional, too attached, I want you to hear this one thing. You are not too much. You were never too much. You were just given very little consistency. Now let's talk about how anxious attachment actually shows up in dating. Because once you actually see these patterns, you can no longer shame yourself for them, or no longer judge yourself for how you've been showing up. You can change your patterns, and this is the moment where we get to change them. One sign is that you become highly attuned to someone's shift in behavior, and even the smallest, tiniest of shifts as well. A slightly shorter message, a delayed reply, overanalyzing the tone of the message or how they're talking to you, even just a slight difference in energy. These tiny subtle changes can often create a disproportionate emotional reaction, because to your nervous system, inconsistency equals threat. Someone's going to take their love away from me. Another real telltale sign is attaching too quickly, faster than you ever intended to. You know, you start off a connection and you have all the right intentions of taking it slow, maintaining your boundaries, but something makes you click straight away and remove those boundaries. So you connect with someone really, really quickly, and your heart kind of skips ahead of all of the facts, what they're actually showing us at face value. You build all these stories and hopes and ambitions of what this relationship's going to be like before you've actually got to know the person properly. And you start to invest emotionally before you actually have any real hard evidence that this is a safe, secure connection. Another common sign of an anxious attachment style is taking distance personally. If someone goes quiet, you don't necessarily go straight to, oh, he's busy, or actually, I have standards too. Your brain jumps to, what did I do wrong? Did I say something? Did he lose interest? And we're going straight to blaming ourselves. You're assuming responsibility for emotional shifts that don't even belong to you. Another telltale sign is over-functioning, giving too much, doing too much, over-accommodating, initiating all the conversations, carrying the emotional load. Not because you generally want to, but because giving feels safer than receiving. Because if you're giving, you're needed, and if you're needed, there's less chance of abandonment. Another sign is that difficulty tolerating uncertainty. You feel the urge to fix, clarify, address, talk, or even apologize apologize for something that you haven't even done. Your body feels so uncomfortable sitting in the unknown that it wants closure, it wants reassurance, it wants that discomfort to stop. And the last telltale sign is that you are likely very often repeatedly drawn to partners who are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, who don't want to commit, or who are generally just avoidantly attached people. Not because they're your type at all, but because their inconsistency mirrors the emotional pattern that your nervous system has associated with love. The biggest issue with our brain is it gravitates more towards what feels familiar than what is actually healthy for us. And this brings us to the pattern that I see most often, the anxious avoidant dynamic. The anxious avoidant dynamic is one of the most common dating patterns. And once you actually get to understand it, so many of your past relationship patterns become so much clearer. The anxious person fears the abandonment, while the avoidant person fears the engulfment and the overwhelm of feelings. The anxious person wants closeness in order to feel safe, and the avoidant person wants distance in order to feel safe. So when an anxious person feels distance forming, they'll generally want to move closer, they'll chase. And when an avoidant person feels connection forming, they'll often retreat and pull back. This triggers the anxious person's fear of abandonment, so they'll pursue, which then triggers the avoidance fear, so they'll retreat. This then intensifies the anxious person's panic, so they'll move even closer, and the cycle then just continues from there. It's this push, pull, chase, retreat. The hope, fear, overfunctioning, underfunctioning, and it feels really intense and intoxicating and very addictive. And not because the connection is special in any way, but because the nervous systems are activating each other's core wounds. What you're calling chemistry is often just two people triggering each other's survival mechanisms. This is why those people with anxious attachment patterns will often describe their relationships as roller coasters. Extreme highs, extreme lows, deep longing, panic, then clarity, then panic again when they're pulling away. And it's not that you're in a passionate connection at all. It's actually that you're in a dysregulated one. And nothing steals your peace more quickly than a dysregulated nervous system. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body when an anxious attachment style is triggered. Because once you actually understand this, you can stop blaming yourself and work on how you can change it to feel better in relationships. When you sense distance with someone that you care about, or even the possibility of distance, your brain activates your threat system. The amygdala, which is responsible for detecting danger, becomes activated. Your cortisol levels, stress hormones, rise, your heart rate increases, and blood flow shifts from the logical part of your brain to the emotional part of your brain. And this is why you can go from feeling really calm to all of a sudden just spiraling in seconds. This is why your thoughts don't feel logical, your emotions feel really intense, and you feel that physical drop and panic in your stomach. You're not overreacting, you're having a physiological response to perceived risk. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps you to reason, I call it the CEO of your brain. It helps you to problem solve, it helps you to regulate. All of that completely goes offline in these moments. And the emotional part of your brain takes over. Your thoughts become really fast and intrusive and fear-driven because your body doesn't feel safe. You can very easily jump to worst case scenario in these situations because your brain is preparing you for potential loss. And this is where the cycle intensifies. When the person reconnects, so when they message you again, when they show affection, when they pull you in close, when they apologize, your brain floods with dopamine and oxytocin. You feel that sense of relief, that deep, soothing relief. And that relief that you're feeling feels like love. It feels like, finally, we're okay again. I can relax, I'm safe. But what you're actually experiencing in these moments is nervous system regulation, not emotional intimacy. And this is why anxious attachment can feel like such an addiction. You're not addicted to the person, you're addicted to the feeling of reassurance after all of that anxiety that you felt. And it's the same psychological mechanisms behind reinforcement loops. Unpredictable rewards that create powerful emotional dependency. Your system becomes so wired to chase the relief rather than the person. But we mistake the need to have the person in order for us to feel safe. Once you understand this, the entire relationship dynamic shifts. You stop confusing anxiety for excitement, and you stop confusing relief for connection. But more importantly, you stop confusing intensity with compatibility. And you start understanding that emotional safety isn't found in chasing somebody, it's found in regulating yourself. Now let's dive into the part that you actually came here for. How to become securely attached. Because becoming securely attached isn't about forcing you to become confident. It isn't about pretending not to care. It isn't about suppressing your emotions or avoiding feeling anything. And it certainly isn't about never feeling triggered again. As human beings, we're bound to be triggered at some point in our lives. So let's put that to bed. We're not avoiding triggers ever. we're learning how to manage triggers in the moment. Becoming secure is all about creating that internal safety so that connection doesn't feel life-threatening in any way. And here are the 5 most effective ways to shift from anxious to secure. Number 1, you build internal safety before you seek external reassurance. This is the foundation of everything, because anxious attachment doesn't come from lack of reassurance, it comes from a lack of internal regulation. When you feel triggered or activated or anxious, your job isn't to chase clarity or try to fix the situation straight away. Your job is to regulate your nervous system so you're making decisions from the logical part of your brain rather than the emotional panic. Internal safety can look a little bit like this: taking a moment to pause before reacting, grounding your body through breathing or physical anchoring. A lot of people do EFT tapping in these moments too. Reminding yourself that discomfort isn't danger, giving yourself a level of compassion rather than self-criticism. You're not chasing the person, you're chasing the regulation. When you learn to regulate from within, you stop chasing. Number 2, you slow down your attachment pace. Anxious attachment attaches too quickly, not necessarily because you want to, but because your nervous system is trying to secure the connection before it starts to feel unstable. So you have to intentionally slow yourself down. Slow those expectations, slow those fantasies, slow the fast forward into the future of this connection, and slow the way that you're interpreting this early chemistry. Take people at the pace that they reveal themselves to you. Let their consistency build that attraction rather than your imagination of what this connection could be like. Security is built through alignment over time, not the intensity at the beginning of it. Number 3, stop romanticizing inconsistency. Now this is a really big one. When love in the past is inconsistent, your nervous system equates that inconsistency with excitement. So you begin to kind of equate this unpredictability with emotional significance. But inconsistency isn't passion, it isn't connection, it isn't chemistry, and it isn't fate. It's emotional dysregulation. So we need to start seeing these inconsistencies as a big red flag, and definitely not see the red flags as a challenge to have to overcome. You need to start finding stability really attractive rather than boring. You also need to start associating calm with safety rather than detachment. Healthy love isn't chaotic, it isn't confusing, and healthy love definitely doesn't leave you in this limbo stage. It actually feels clear, reciprocal, grounded, and it's the least you deserve, right? Number 4, you create boundaries that protect your emotional world. Anxious attachment wants closeness at any given cost. It wants so desperately to maintain connection, even if that means abandoning yourself in the meantime. Becoming secure means the exact opposite. You actually prioritize your emotional integrity. This means not explaining yourself repeatedly, not shrinking yourself to keep somebody, not accepting breadcrumbs, not tolerating anxiety as this norm in dating, and not building a full emotional life with someone after just 2 dates. Boundaries have nothing to do with controlling other people. They're about honoring and protecting yourself. And when you actually start honoring yourself, your nervous system can realize that actually I don't need someone else in order to feel safe within myself. That is my priority, that is my focus. And number 5, you learn secure communication. Anxious attachment communicates from fear. Long messages, emotional pleas, overanalyzing texts, fixing, chasing, doing, even over-explaining or apologizing or trying to correct things that you didn't break. Secure attachment communicates from grounded truth. It can sound a little bit like, I value consistency and clarity. If we're on the same page with that, great. If not, that's okay too. But I'm going to honor what I need and what I deserve in a relationship. This isn't passive, it's not aggressive in any way. It's regulated, clear, and self-respecting. When you begin communicating from a place of internal calm, something amazing happens. The wrong people for you disappear very quickly, and the right people are all of a sudden gravitated towards you, because having that secure communication can reveal misalignment really early on in a connection. It protects your heart, filters out emotional immaturity, and amplifies your self-worth. And this is exactly why I created Secure Love Academy. If you're someone who feels stuck in anxious attachment, constantly overthinking, chasing that reassurance from somebody, confusing chemistry with connection, or just repeating the same patterns time and time again in dating and relationships, Secure Love Academy gives you the emotional tools and psychological understanding to help you become secure from the inside out. We rewire your attachment patterns, regulate your nervous system, build your self-concept, shift your relationship standards, develop secure communication, and also teach you exactly how to align with secure, solid, steady love. So if you want to break all those patterns for good and finally start feeling more secure in love, the link to Secure Love Academy is in the description below. But I want to leave you with this final truth, and this is something most people never hear. Anxious attachment isn't who you are. It's a response that your body had to learn to survive emotional unpredictability. You were never too much, you were never too emotional, you were never too intense. You were simply protecting yourself in the only way that you knew how. Becoming secure isn't isn't about having to become a different person. It's about becoming the version of you who no longer sees love as a threat. Because when you heal, when you regulate, when you raise your standards, when you rewire, the anxiousness can dissolve and the overthinking just quietens. And love can finally feel safe. Not because someone else has shown up perfectly, but because you have done it for you. If you want more psychology backed videos like this one, hit subscribe and I will see you in the next video.